So the last time I explained to you the divine qualities and how these divine qualities, 26 of them, are different from the 20 qualities that are there in the 13th chapter. One is essentially about the inner mental makeup of the individual who has spiritual knowledge. And these 26 are dealing primarily with the behavior of a person who is having divine qualities. The beginning of all divine and demonic natures comes essentially from avidya. I explained to you that the Bhagavad-Gita is a synthesis of multiple philosophies, and we are dealing now with yoga and sankhya, and we are trying to integrate them and find a bridge between them. In yoga, there are five kleshas. The first of them is called avidya. And avidya essentially consists of seeing permanence in impermanence, seeing purity in things that are compounded and impure, and seeing joy in things that are actually the cause of sorrow. So this causes the individual to see permanence in this world which is constantly changing. And therefore, for him, the world is Prakriti. And since he finds Prakriti to be real, although it is really unreal, since it is always changing, his entire value system, his value base, shifts onto valuing Prakriti. And as it shifts onto valuing Prakriti, what really happens is that it begins to identify with the Prakriti of the body-mind. And hence, he believes that this body, this mind, this intelligence is actually what he is. And he creates asmita, or he creates this sense of self. And this sense of self leads to a predominance, a dominance of Rajo and Tamagun. So Rajo and Tamagun become prominent with the expansion of Asmita. And since they become prominent with the formation of Asmita and the strengthening of Asmita, the greater the avidya, the greater the Asmita, the greater the dominance of Tamo and Rajoguna. And hence, the greater the dominance of the demonic qualities that lie within each of us. So, the attention then shifts from the soul, from God and the soul, it moves to the external world. And as it moves to the external world, it moves through the senses to the objects of the senses. A very early Upanishad, which is known as the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, declares, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo, bandhaya vishaya sangim, mukte nirvishayam smritam. The mind is the cause of your bondage. The mind is the cause of your salvation and liberation. The mind, when occupied with the objects of the senses, is the cause of your bondage. So the mind that is occupied with the things of the world is the cause of your bondage and suffering. Whereas the mind which is attached, which is free from the objects of the world, free from the sense objects, Such a mind is the cause of your salvation and liberation. In the Maitri Upanishad, there's also a very interesting verse which says, Chittam evam hi sansaram tat prayatnena shodhayet. Yes chittam tan manobhavati guyam etat sanatanam. So there the Maitri Upanishad says that your mind is the world. So don't try to change the world. Don't try to clean up the world. First, try to clean up your own mind. Because your mind is the world, that is the greatest secret. So the mind which is an illusion, the mind which you are identifying with, which lays great value upon the things of the world and the objects of the senses, causes your suffering. It creates your hell. Yes, it may create few moments of pleasure in heaven because your mind is heaven and hell. But ultimately, it causes you great suffering because attachment to the things of the world which do not last is the cause of suffering. Therefore, in the Bhagavad-Geeta, Krishna says very clearly, he declares that this world is a dukhalayam ashashvatam. This is a anityam asukham lokam. This world is a place of misery where you cannot find lasting happiness. He tells Arjun in the 13th chapter, Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Birth, death, old age, disease, fault, misfortune, and happiness. Look around you. It's there for you and everyone else. So early on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins to explain how attachment to the objects of the senses results in illusion. So if you go to the Bhagavad Gita and we go to the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, you go to verse number 62, we come to what is commonly spoken of as the ladder of fall. And in the ladder of fall, it all begins, as the Amrita Bindu Upanishad says, by occupying your mind with the objects of the senses, by keeping your attention, your heart, your attachments to things that are constantly changing, which are all Prakriti. In text 62 of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangaste Supajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kamat Krodha Vijayate. While contemplating, while thinking of the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, craving develops. And from this craving, when it is obstructed, when you're obstructed from getting the objects of the senses that you're craving, anger develops. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. This is chapter 2, text 63. Krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibramah. Smriti brahmashat buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. From anger, delusion arises, moha. And from delusion, you get bewilderment or loss of memory. And when your memory is lost and bewildered, you don't know who you are, where you are, what is your position, what is your duty, how you should behave. Your intelligence and discrimination are lost. And when your intelligence and discrimination are lost, buddhi nashat pranashyati. With the destruction of intelligence and discrimination, one falls into material consciousness. Further, in chapter 3, point 37, Krishna explains to Arjun. Arjun asks, what is the cause of our getting entangled in the world? What is the cause of us not realizing our spiritual identity? What is the cause of our fall? And Bhagavan Vacha, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Kama Esha Krodha Esha, Rajoguno Samudbhava, Mahashano Mahapapma, Vidyayanam Iha Vairinam. This is chapter 3, 37th verse. The Supreme Lord says, it is craving alone, lust alone, strong desire alone, which is born out of the contact with Rajoguna, which is later transformed into anger. Know this as the sinful, all-devouring enemy within this world. So, in the 16th chapter, Krishna has already explained in verse number 8. Sorry, in verse number 7. Pravrittim, no, not 7, I think it is the previous verse. It is in verse number 4, which we discussed last time. Dambo darpo abhimanascha krodhat paryusham evacha ajnanam chabijatasya partha sampadam asvirim. So in this verse, you can see the qualities of one who has thus placed his values, his vision, his attachment to the ever-changing Prakriti. The Prakriti of his body-mind and the Prakriti of the world, which are the objects of his senses, which are also born of Prakriti. And he says, arrogance, pride, conceit, harshness, ignorance, these are all the qualities that belong to those of demonic nature, O son of Partha. So I took it upon myself to take a look at what does modern psychology or modern psychiatry have to say about such an individual who's demonic. Because this demonic nature was described by Krishna thousands of years ago. And how do we, in the 21st century, how do we classify, how do we diagnose, or how do we look at the person who is of Asuri Sampada? So it's important to understand when we are studying the Asuri Sampada purely from the sense of, shall we say, a psychiatric or psychological viewpoint, we must understand that Gita does not in Asuri Sampada describe psychosis, for there are no hallucinations, there are no delusions, there are no neurocognitive disorders, nor for that matter does it strictly discuss anything which is considered an affective disorder, which would include sadness, panic disorder, trauma. The Asuric nature is essentially classified in psychiatry under their current version of their diagnostic and statistical manual as a personality and moral disorder. So it's not really a mental illness in the conventional sense. Now it's important to understand this because with mental illness, one cannot function within the world. But here we have somebody who not only functions within the world, but who also may be successful within the world. And I'd like to go into this a little bit before we discuss the actual verses. But essentially, it talks about people who are amoral, who have a personality disorder. And these people who have a personality disorder are often very successful within the world. You will see them in very high positions. You will see them at the top levels in companies, you'll find them in top levels in government, you'll find them in top levels in bureaucracy, you'll find them in top levels among professionals. And it's important to know what these characteristics are. So essentially, if you want to psychiatrically or psychologically classify the Asuric individual, it comes under the classification of personality disorder rather than psychosis or even affective disorder. So, this person who has a personality disorder has what kind of personality disorder? He has, as you go further into it, it starts with the traits of narcissism, it continues with the traits of antisocial behavior, and eventually goes into what is known as malignant narcissism. Essentially, this is known as the dark tetrad. What is this dark tetrad, which is described by psychiatrists and psychologists? First of all, there is narcissism, a malignant narcissism. There's a sense of grandiosity. I am so great. I am so wonderful. I am so exceptional. I am unique. You know, there are two things. One is egoism and the other is egotism. Egoism is centering everything around yourself, whereas egotism is having a grandiose opinion of yourself. In the narcissistic personality disorder, you see both. And both of them are unchecked. They think the world revolves around them. They are very grandiose. They have a sense of entitlement. They feel they are exceptional individuals. They are very exploitative in their relationships. And they really cannot see or sense the feelings of the other person. Similarly, after narcissism, the second factor in this tetrad is Machiavellism. Machiavellism means after the prince Niccolo Machiavelli, who wrote the book The Prince, a person who schemes, who plans, who plots. He does everything for his own, out of his own sense of entitlement and grandiosity, around the idea that the whole life revolves around him. He cares little for other people, and therefore, through his schemes and his maneuvers, he manipulates people and situations for his dominance. So, after you have narcissism and you have Machiavellism, you have psychopathic traits. So, what is the difference between psychopathy and psychosis? Psychosis is you imagine things that someone is talking to you or constantly. You imagine you start seeing things. So, your senses are deceiving you. That is psychosis, which is not discussed in this Asuri Sampada. Instead, it is psychopathism. And what do we mean by psychopathy? Psychopathy includes complete insensitivity to other individuals. He does not care about other individuals. He has no feelings about other individuals. He is completely free from guilt for the actions he does which cause social disorder and hurt and pain to other people. And after this psychopathic third part of this tetrad, dark tetrad, the fourth is called sadism. Sadism is taking delight in the sufferings of others. There is a word for it in German. It's called Schadenfreude. Taking delight in the sufferings of other people. So these are the four in the tetrad. Under the diagnostic and statistical manual, you have this personality disorder, which consists of a combination of narcissism and antisocial personality disorder, under the cluster B or cluster 2 of personality disorders. This individual also uses aggression and violence to dominate and to get what he wants. He uses in power, displaying hostility and cruelty. He shows no remorse. And these are the core features of antisocial personality disorder. So, this individual, he functions in such a manner because he is driven by the three gates that lead to hell: craving or desire, anger, and greed. Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. So we'll go to the verses themselves so you will get a better understanding. So there is a close overlap between these conditions described in the Bhagavad-Gita and malignant narcissism, psychopathy spectrum, and antisocial personality structure. So first we come to the core cluster traits in 16.4. In 16.4, Krishna explains arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. And these are all typical of the narcissistic disorder. Grandiosity, entitlement, anger, aggression, low agreeableness, lack of insight. And then we go on to 16 verses 16.7 to 8. In verses 16.7, Krishna starts the entire discussion in full swing. And he starts with the root cause of their distorted personality. Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha janana vidurasuraha. Na saucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Essentially because they are focused on Prakriti and on increasing their enjoyment, power, and uniqueness within Prakriti, they don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. I've discussed last time or in previous classes that there are three diseases of the mind. The first disease is the desire to enjoy through your senses the things of the world. The second is to control and to possess the things of the world. Enjoyer, controller, and possessor. And the third disease of the mind is to show that you are better off than other individuals. Because you cannot see the totality of creation and how you are but part of God's plan, as is everyone else. You want to demonstrate that you are better, you are higher, you are superior. If you're not materially superior, you want to show that you're spiritually superior. So in the 9th chapter, there is the last verse which says, Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam yajgnatva mam shantim richati. Very clearly he points out that when you learn that indeed God is the only enjoyer, God is the only controller and possessor, and that God is equal friend to all living entities. So you are not the enjoyer, God is the enjoyer. You are not the possessor or controller. God is the possessor and controller. And you are not superior to anybody else because God is equal to all other living entities. When you realize this, he says, Shantim Richati, then you get peace. But here in text 7 of 16th chapter, the individual doesn't know this. He doesn't know what is to be done. He doesn't know what is not to be done. He has no faith in the scriptures. Such a person will say, oh, scriptures are all nonsense which have been written to con people in olden times. They make no sense. They are not applicable to current day. They're written by human beings. And thus, when they give up the spiritual locus of the spiritual center, which is the scripture around which everything revolves, they automatically get lost. They don't know what is to be done, what is not to be done. They have the same idea towards the constitution or the penal code. They know that these laws exist. Oh, these laws, it's meant for dumb people. We know how to circumvent these laws. So they break the laws of man and they break the laws of God. And they break both these laws and with the impression that they are not subject to these laws. See, one of the parts of the malignant narcissism is you feel that you're unique. You feel that you're superior to everyone else. And you feel all these scriptural laws and laws of the land, they apply to ordinary people, they don't apply to me. So they have no cleanliness, no mental cleanliness, and no physical cleanliness because they quickly acquire venereal diseases and they don't know how to behave. You cannot find truth in them. For them, there is no truth. Whatever suits their personal ego purpose is what is right. This in psychiatry is known as ego syntonicity. That they believe that whatever is right for their ego, that is right. So therefore you cannot find truth also in them. Asatyam apratishtam te jagad ahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. So they believe, oh, this world is unreal. They are attracted to such philosophies. What philosophies? Yes, this world is temporary. The illusion is that of permanence when everything is changing. But this world is not unreal. But this is the philosophy that these people who are demonic are drawn to. Because this world is unreal, there is no foundation. They will say there is no God in control. Why? I am God, you are God. Of course, I know I am God, so I am superior to you. So they believe that this world is an illusion. There is no foundation. There is no God in control. Aparaspara sambhutam, it is only desire and sex which has produced the creation. And there is nothing in this world other than desire which must be fulfilled. So, this is the belief of those people who are having Asuri Sampada. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmano alpabuddhaya prabhavantya ugra karmanah shayo shayo jagato ahita. Following such conclusion, these demonic individuals who are lost to themselves, who have no discrimination or intelligence, They may have worldly intelligence, they don't have spiritual intelligence. And they engage in all kinds of harmful, horrible works that are meant to destroy this world. काम आश्रित्य दुष्पुरम दंभ मान मदान्वितः मोह गृहीत्वद ग्रहण प्रवर्तन्ते असुचिव्रतः. Taking shelter of insatiable lust or craving, pride and false prestige, and being thus in illusion, always sworn to perform impure, unclean work, always attracted by impermanent things. The demonic individual lives within this world. Chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashritah काम उपभोग परम एतवादिति निश्चितः. आशा पाशा शतैर्बद्ध काम क्रोध परायण इहन्ते काम भोगर्थम अन्यन अर्थ संचयन. They believe that to gratify their senses in this life is the prime necessity of human civilization. This is typical Charvak philosophy. यावत् जीवेत सुखत जीवेत ऋणम कृत्वा घृतम पिबेत भस्मीभूतस्य देहस्य पुनर्जन्म कुट भवेत. As long as you are living, enjoy the things of the world. Take a loan. Take it on EMI. Enjoy yourself. Ghritam pibet. Drink ghee. After you die, your body becomes ashes. Who knows if there's another life? This is the attitude and the mentality of those who are having Asuric nature. Because of this attachment to things that are constantly changing because of Prakriti, they're attached to Prakriti, but Prakriti keeps changing. So that gives them anxiety. Asha, Pasha, all their hopes are but a noose. Shatair Baddha, hundreds and thousands of desires are a noose around their neck. Kama Krodha Parayanaha, they are full of craving and full of anger. And he says, Ihante kama bhogartham anayena artha sanchayan. So they illegally acquire wealth. They will break the law. They will steal from the government. They will steal from the banks. They will steal from financial institutions. They will not pay their taxes. They will try to avoid, which everyone does, but they will try to evade taxes illegally. So this is the nature of those who are Asuric. Idam adya maya labdham imam prapshase manoratham. This I have gained today. This I shall gain tomorrow. According to my desires. They are seated on a manorath. Manoratha means they are on a chariot, which is just the mind. It is not divinely guided. So we must go back to the Kathopanishad where he says, Atmanam rathinam vidhi shariram ratham evatu buddhim tu saradam vidhi manah pragraham evacha indriyani paranyahur vishayams teshu gocharan. The body is the chariot of the soul. The intelligence is the charioteer. The mind are the reins. And the horses are the senses. One whose mind is divinely guided, whose mind is restrained, whose senses are controlled, such people go tad Vishnu paramam padam. But those whose intelligence is not divinely guided, whose mind is not controlled, whose senses are unrestrained, they go to Narak. In fact, forget about taking guidance from God. They think they are God. Ishwaro ham aham bhogi, siddho ham balavan sukhi. Compare this with the earlier verse I quoted to you. That bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam yaj gnatva mam shantim richati. That God is the only enjoyer, He is the only controller and possessor, that He is equal friend to all living entities, and when you know this, you will get peace. Here is the opposite formula. Ishwaro aham yogi, I am the controller and possessor, I am the enjoyer. Siddhoham, I am perfect, better than everyone else. I am all powerful and I am very happy. Adhyo abhijanavam asmi. Ko anyo asti sadrisho maya. Yaksha se dasyami modisya itya ajnana vimohitah. So this is the attitude they have. They want to do virtue signaling. They want to say, I have found God. You see, I have found God. And I have found God because I know that now I have realized I am God. That is the philosophy I follow. Not only do you believe that you have found God and that you have become God, but also you believe that you will give some charity, you will perform some sacrifice in a very ostentatious manner, which is called virtue signaling, telling everybody I am so virtuous. They will contribute large amounts. They will have their own pandals for worship of the deity, and they will do all these kind of things. And thus, these people are deluded by ignorance. Aneka chitta vibhranta mohajal samavrita prasakta kama bhogeshu patantya narake asuchau. So perplexed by various anxieties. Why? Because their attention and attachment is on Prakriti, which is always changing. Bound by a network of illusions, one becomes too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and he falls down into hell. Atma sambhavitah stabdah dhanna mana madanvitah yajante nam yagneshte dambena vidhi purvakam. Self-complacent, self-satisfied, always impudent, arrogant, hurtful to others, deluded by their wealth and false prestige. They perform various yagyas or sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations. There is a verse from the Naraj Pantaratra which says, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantaki Harer Bhakti Utpate Eva Kalpate. If you perform bhakti without reference to the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, or the Pancharatra, you are merely creating a disruption in society, a disruption and a disturbance in society. This is how these people perform their religious activities. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samshritah mam atma paradeheshu pradvishanto abhyasuyakah. So deluded by their false ego, their narcissism, their antisocial personality, their strength, their craving and anger, they become even envious of the Supreme Lord. They deny God because they want to be God, therefore they have to deny Him. And although that Lord is seated in their own hearts and in the hearts of others, they actually speak against real religion. Tannaham dvishita kruran samsareshu naradhamam. Shipyame ajashram ashubham Asurishva eva yonishu. Such people who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, who are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into demonic species. They're cast by me into demonic species of life. So what happens? You're born in a family which has certain religious traditions. You ignore them. Your next birth is in a family without these traditions. And when you act sinfully in that life, then you move to the next level downwards. So you move in what we call as a descending spiral into lower and lower forms of life and finally into hell. Asurim yonim apanam mudho janmani janmani mam apraiva aprapyeva ikaunteya tato yantya adhamam gatim. Attaining repeated births among species of demonic life, such people never approach me. Gradually, they sink down into the most abominable part of existence. And thus he says, there are three gates that lead to hell: craving, lust, anger, and greed. And every sane man should give these up, for they lead to degradation of the soul. Vidam narakasya idam dwaram nashanam atmanah kama krodhas tatha lobhas tasmadeta trayam tajet. So we will stop here because next time we will see what is the recommendation or the prescription or the advice Krishna has for these people who are possessing a demonic nature. With this, I will conclude today's session. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Thank you for today's session, Shantanji. My first question is: can systems like corporate culture or politics unintentionally encourage Asuric tendencies in modern times?
Of course, they encourage Asuric tendencies. They encourage, in fact, there's a wonderful book you should read, and that book is called The Wisdom of the Psychopath. Now, what do you mean by wisdom of the psychopath? There are certain psychopathic tendencies where you're insensitive to feelings of others. And these are all encouraged in a hierarchical system where one is competitively trying to climb the corporate ladder. In fact, there is clear evidence where studies have shown that in corporate life, it's not that the people who rise to the top, the senior executives or the CEOs, are mentally not sane. But there is certainly a predominance of certain traits which are intentionally cultivated in them because they're in a hierarchical culture which is intensely competitive to reach the top. So they have to, for the sake of ascension within that hierarchical system, they have to shut themselves off from the feelings of other people around them. They have to have a certain amount of narcissism. They have to be a little bit not bothered about how their actions affect other people individually, as long as they are seen as being successful in the performance of their work, which actually promotes them within the organization. So, in fact, they have found that not psychopathy, but actually in terms of psychopathic traits or narcissistic traits, people in senior executive positions, including especially the CEOs, are more likely to have. How much more likely to have these traits? 3 times to 12 times more likely to have these traits than the ordinary individual. Is that clear?
Right. And my next question is, how can individuals recognize these traits in themselves without falling into guilt or denial? And is there any way that,
When they experience deep cravings, when they experience anger, when they experience greed, they should realize they've already fallen into that trap and they should try to extricate themselves as soon as possible. Yes.
uh,
You
what
asking
are
some
the
other question.
what are the ways in which they can, remove themselves or try not to
What
follow
is the
these
solution?
demonic
Solution will be discussed next time.
traits? All Thank you so much, Shantanu for today's wonderful session. To all our viewers, do stay connected with us on next as we meet again on next Thursday at 8 a.m. for yet another session on the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna.
Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.